Okay, 6 o'clock, in order.
Okay.
All members are present, and so we'll go right into our communication items.
All right, sounds good. So I did add, I will just call out that I did add one agenda item, which is our QComp update. That is something that and I'll speak a little bit more about that after communication, but I did want to just call out that I added that to the agenda, so we make sure that we get that covered today as well. So with that, I will invite our elementary school principal up so we can hear what has been happening at the elementary. The hot seat next to you, Bruce, right?
Okay.
Right. Can't believe we're at the end of the school year already, and students are on summer break, staff are on summer break, much deserved. As you can see in my update, just kind of a hodgepodge, odds and ends, starting off with end of the year highlights. As you know, the end of the school year can provide just special learning opportunities, special projects, different presentations, field trips, and then we had our last day of school assembly. And much of these opportunities I wanted to call out are made possible by our successful fundraiser that we have earlier in the fall. And so that's really how and why we're able to do some of those fun activities throughout the school year, but more so at the end of the school year. In addition, at the end, I was able to meet with all certified staff in one-on-one meetings. Back in July, when I first started, I had a connect meeting with each staff member one-on-one, and then again here at the end of the school year. So that was nice to have that. And we use that time just for reflection and a time to discuss items, looking ahead to next year. What are some areas that I can support as we look ahead? Also, end of the year highlight, I just wanted to say thank you to many of the board members and public that were able to gather for our retirement gathering for Deb, Joan, and Mary. It was a great turnout and very uplifting and a great time for us to celebrate their commitment to our students and to our district. So thank you for those of you that were able to make it. Student recognition, you can see a whole slew of students that we recognized at our end of the year assembly. We've got our 1,000,000-word readers. We had certificates for students who read 1 million words, 2 million words, and we had a 5th grader who also reached 3 million words. So their names are listed for your reference. We also recognized and honored our 5th grade school patrol students. They stood up and we gave them a nice round of applause, thanking them for the work that they do throughout the school year. Warm temperatures, cold temperatures, rain, snow, all of the above, so their names are listed as well. And then lastly, I couldn't remember if I shared with you, we had 5th grade representatives go to the Math Masters competition. So I just wanted to call out their names individually and thank them for representing Paynesville area schools and doing a wonderful job at Math Masters, which was held in St. John's, or at St. John's. We also had the 5th grade music program towards the end of the school year, and we combined that with the 5th grade graduation. This was new this year. We typically have not done a 5th grade graduation, so that was something that we added and combined with the music program. So I just wanted to say a thank you to the 5th grade students, Mrs. Bungham and Mrs. Shoemaker, who was our substitute for Mrs. Strand while she was out, for putting together that music program and honoring our 5th grade students as they make their way over here to the secondary building next year. Summer updates. We have a lot of things happening compared to last summer when the building was closed down for the units that were put in. Our building is still buzzing with student voices. We have PAWS over there. We've got some community ed classes happening throughout the summer. I wanted to give a shout out to our custodial staff. The first day when students were done, they started cleaning classrooms right away. And so they are knee deep into classrooms, moving furniture, making repairs, getting all of that started. Kitchen staff are providing breakfast and lunch to not only our PAWS students, but to our summer meal program. And so they're in the kitchen in the mornings, welcoming families in who are choosing that breakfast and lunch option over the summer. Also wanted to give a shout out to Ken and your crew for spreading the new mulch on our playground. That was delivered to us, and they got that spread out June 7th as soon as students were done. So that's all spread out. It looks very nice. We had some very worn out areas under the swings and under areas that really needed some attention. So thank you, Ken, and I don't know who your crew members were, but thank you to them as well. Personnel updates. We have multiple para positions that are opened. Those are posted for. We are really looking at doing another push after 4th of July. Really getting that out there, kind of, hitting that button to hit a reset and getting people in our doors to apply for those para positions. We are also working to fill 4 certified positions, including 3 classroom and 1 special education position, working with Chris as we share staff with community education in our preschool programming. So 2 of those certified positions are for that program. Lastly, in closing, I would just like to say a sincere thank you for giving me the opportunity to serve Paynesville Area Elementary School as your principal here. I am beyond grateful for the time, grace, and support I have received from you as board members, from students, families, and the staff throughout the district. I look forward to welcoming our Bulldog staff and students back for another great school year. 55 days till our open house. So when I counted, I was like, okay, got some work to do. But I'm also very excited for that work. I will definitely take some time for some rest and relaxation throughout those 55 days, but I'm excited, looking forward to the next school year already. Coming to Paynesville and being a Bulldog has been a great transition for not only myself, but for my family. As you know, my daughters, they'll be headed into 6th grade and 4th grade next year. And we are a very active family within Paynesville, and it feels good to be teaching where we can call home. Not teaching, but principal, where we can call home. So this has been great. So thank you. Open it up for questions or comments.
We're glad to have you.
I know your one daughter was really excited about being a Bulldog and the other was kind of on the fence. How is she transitioning?
The green is soaking in, so she's yeah, she's looking forward to coming back as a Bulldog again.
Wonderful.
I am headed out to the ball field shortly after our admin.
Enjoy this softball game.
Thank you.
Right. So next I will share with you the report from our secondary principal. He is at a conference today, so he's not able to join us. But I will share this one out. Board notes, June. So Mr. Orline wanted to call out a thank you for graduation. Thank you for everyone who made our first graduation ceremony in the PAC a success. We had a lot of conversation administratively about what went well, what would we like to see different, and what ideas have we heard from people that were just part of that day. So I think that was, something that he noted as well, that we've taken note of the things that went well and where the areas that we need to make adjustments. So this year we had 58 graduates. Next year is going to be approximately 86. So we've had 84, 85, 86, kind of in that ballpark of students. So markedly different. So it'll be interesting to see. The car parade was also a success. There were 40 vehicles in the car parade approximately. The plan is to continue that tradition. Thanks to the Paynesville Police and Fire Department, Mr. Skoglund, Brad Skoglund, Rick Hendrickson, and Jesse Rasmussen. They do all the setup. They organize the cars in the field, get kids kind of acclimated to where they need to be, and then make sure that we have a safe transition over to the school for graduation. So thank you to them. This summer, some of the things that are happening in the secondary building, they're working on cleaning up some language in the handbooks. That's something that's done every year and annually, so it's kind of a pretty typical summer activity. Working on the schedules for students and staff, and preparing for open house in the start of a new school year. I think sometimes people, this is Janelle's commentary, not David's notes, but I think sometimes you think that summer just when things shut down, and there's a lot of prep work that happens by the building leadership over the summers, and so I think it's important, or I just want to say thank you to them as we do that as well. So that was Mr. Orline's update. If there are questions, feel free to, you can let me know and I'll pass them along or send him an email. And I know he'll be happy to respond to any questions that you would have as well. Okay. Next on our agenda is to invite up our activities director, Mr. Hendrickson. Come on up. And I'll share your report for everybody to see.
Right. Well, like it says here, it's been a fast year. A lot has gone on. A lot has been learned along the way. Still have a lot to learn. Thankfully, I have a lot of really smart, intelligent people around me that I can help or ask for help, and some resources that just a phone call away. Hopefully, Mother Nature will be a little bit more cooperative next year. It wasn't quite so good this year, but hopefully that means we'll have a little bit better chance next year. Now that we're entering summer, time has come to finalize next fall's or this upcoming fall's schedules for both high school and junior high levels. Make sure we're confirming schedules with our opponents and also our officiating associations, and making sure we have all of our start times and sites and the number of officials that we need for different levels too. Sometimes we need a little bit extra, and just make sure we got it all squared away on our website so we can check all that off. And we had a successful spring season once we finally got it going. We crammed about a 7-week season for all of our sports into about 4.5. So we had a lot to get in there. Our girls track and field team earned their way to True Team State again. That was on May 20th at Stillwater High School. We finished 9 out of the 12 teams participating. And I actually got to hop into the van last Thursday and go watch Brooklyn Frank compete at the state track and field meet. She made it there through the 100-meter dash, and she finished 12th out of the 16 competitors. She actually had set a new personal best, but the time that won the state championship last year was actually shattered this year. It was like probably about 5th place, I think, after the heats. So a lot of stiff competition down there, but it was exciting to go watch her compete. And then the following day, Becca Walls went down and competed in the pole vault. And she finished 7 out of the 17th competitors. Our baseball and softball teams are in the home playoff games. Baseball won or tied for a conference championship and finished 3rd in the section. Our golf teams had really strong seasons with the new coach, Tom Rockus, in there. And they improved a lot. Our girls team improved by 61 strokes at the section meet from a year ago, which we have 4 competitors that are recorded for their scores there. So they improved over 15 strokes per golfer, which is incredible. And boys also had a really strong season in a difficult section. I know we had several golfers that were right on the cusp of possibly making it to a state meet, but just came up a couple strokes short. And our clay team won the conference, and we also had 3 concerts for band and choir in May. So busy month of May. Our participation numbers continue to be good in all of our sports and activities, and we have some schools in our conference that are down to maybe 2 levels or even just 1 level. We have a couple of schools in our conference down to 1 team for softball. So thankfully our numbers continue to stay high, and we're able to have 3 levels typically for pretty much all of our high school sports and 7th and 8th grade teams for our middle schools. So we're fortunate that we have that. Some bigger schools that are a lot higher in enrollment are kind of struggling with the numbers, but I think we have a lot of teachers and coaches that really engage with our students and really encourage them to be active in whatever that they're interested in, make sure that they're out for something. And much like Cassie said, just a big thank you to everybody to help make our activities happen and help make me feel welcome this first year. There's a lot that go into making our activities possible, whether it's ticket takers, sort table workers, concessions workers, things like that, just to name a few. But we're all thankful for all the opportunities that we're able to provide for our young boys and girls here, and in such a community or in a community that really supports all the activities that we have. So really exciting. So one of the highlights of my year last year was back on November 4th, Maddie Wetland raced in the cross-country meet down in the cities, and I drove the van down there with a group of coaches and some of her supporters, and then came all the way back. I was here for maybe a half an hour. I hopped in Mr. Orline's truck and we went down to watch the section championship for volleyball. So I kind of made my way around the state over the course of about 14 hours or whatever that was. So it was a lot of fun, really good experience. It was kind of cool just to be in different venues and completely different parts of the state. So one of the fun parts of the job, I would say. So, you guys have any questions?
I'll just piggyback on one thing that you said, Rick, and that is that, some schools, and I don't know if this is true or not, but some schools you might just throw out, here's what's offered. Please show up or they won't show up. But in a school where there's an effort to actually encourage kids, even sometimes one-on-one. You don't want to talk to somebody and do something they don't want to do, but there's a lot of kids out there that probably would like to do something, but they're shy, they stand back, and so, to be able to do that as a school, that would keep our numbers up. But it takes a total effort from the whole administration, the whole staff. See those kids that are maybe not a great athlete, but they might enjoy track or something if they were encouraged.
Try something new. So,
It's kind of fun to see all of the encouragement that comes from the students and the staff here. When we have a team that's ready to go to state or is competing at a higher level, and everybody just comes out and just cheers them on, and even in the school when they come down the hallway and the kids are all lined up and cheering them, it's exciting to see that kind of thing, and you don't see that in all schools.
it's fun to have that support for sure.
Yeah, the support, I think, adds to the thrill of being an athlete or in whatever sport or FFA or whatever. We've got support here, and that's wonderful to see.
That enthusiasm kind of feeds off everybody.
Yes,
That's what
exactly.
makes it happen.
Exactly.
And thank you for a good year.
All right. Right. Next, I will provide just a brief technology director update. Beginning in August, so July, we only have one board meeting. And we traditionally have not had just general communication updates at that meeting, but beginning in August, I will be introducing you to a contracted tech director support that will be providing some of the network security, kind of the high level, make sure that our district is functioning like Jonah has been doing remotely. And he'll be able to hear James Lang is his name from Totus Tech. We'll be providing a contracted support for our district and will be available to you as board members to be able to answer questions about what's happening technology-wise. One of the areas that we found in Jonah's absence is that each of our buildings really was kind of lacking somebody to help with the day-to-day troubleshooting. When you have one-to-one devices, you're bound to have things that just kind of go awry. And so one of the things, and when we get into budget, I'll update a little bit more, but one of the things that we have done is evaluated an opportunity to do some contracted support that allows us to continue on the trajectory that we've been on and provide the individualized tech assistance for each of our sites that our teachers and students will have that immediate response to. So we're excited about that opportunity. It came through really a cost neutral transaction for us, which in my mind was a really important factor in looking at the possibilities. So I'm excited to introduce them to you in August, but I also wanted to just let everybody know where that is, because that tech director has fallen off of our communication for a while. So I just wanted to bring that up to board members as well.
We still have an open requisition for an actual director, correct?
We would work through this for this year, and then if it's not working for us, we can reevaluate.
Gotcha.
But by committing the funds to the individual tech assistance and the contract, that would be where our funds have been allocated versus just setting aside a separate set of money.
Gotcha.
Okay.
And so I think it's kind of comparable of what we would have paid, say, a tech director.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Thank
Yep, absolutely. Yep. Okay, any other questions on that? Okay, so we'll invite up Chris O'Brien for our community education director update.
I did not bring a paper copy and my computer decided to die, so I'll wing it.
Do you,
Yes,
do you want mine?
I'll be fine.
Okay.
Okay, so everybody else is talking about the end of the school year and community ed is just gearing up for one of their busier times, which is the summer. So we started our summer rec programs June 5th. We kind of nicely are phasing it in, which is a little less stressful than starting everything on the same day, but our junior baseball, junior softball, t-ball, soccer, those all started on June 5th. And this week we have pause, our school age care started, and swimming lessons. And along with that is transportation. So I've been here since 7 a.m. I jumped in a van and I drove kids to the swimming lessons today. So we're getting things rolling. And then next week our gymnastics starts, and then the week after that we'll have, and then sport camps kind of trickle in and throughout the summer. So the pack is busy in the mornings with some of those activities that are going on, and then a little bit quieter in the afternoons. Our summer pause program has about 101 contracts right now, and we are excited about some of the cool field trips that are coming up and things that are going on. And we have that. Our new LEO program has been working really well. People are checking their kids in and out using the iPads, so we anticipate that will go much smoother by the end of the summer. What else? Let me look. Next Monday we have Juneteenth, and we sent out word to everyone that are in our programs and in athletics that is now a national holiday and a Minnesota state holiday. So we will not have activities going on. Pause and the breakfast and lunch program will stay open for the community. But other than that, everything we're closing in honor of that national holiday. So we are putting out information on Facebook and in emails just to get people up to speed so they know what to do with their kids during that time. Fall catalog's gonna come out soon, believe it or not. We have summer has even started and we're talking about fall. So we're starting to think about kind of programs that we're gonna put in our catalog. We're gonna use our new registration program to put those together. And so we're making the deadline August 1st. It should come out in mid-August. So just before school's gonna start, we'll gear things back up. And then in July, we got the summer concert series. So if you're looking for something to do on Thursday evenings, you can come out to Veterans Park and we have bands and there'll be food, and there's a clip, I connected the poster to it if you haven't seen it.
All right.
Are there any questions? Oh, we are interviewing, which she talked about that previously. We have interviewed for our preschool position and hoping to get a few phone calls so we can hire out a couple spots, and then we'll be ready for the fall with our preschool.
So, and I'll just give board members so you're gonna see some of those exchanges happening at the end of June, hopefully. We received some preschool resignations, and so instead of waiting for board action to accept the resignation, post the position, we proactively do all of that. So that's one of the things that just has been happening. But instead of waiting, it's always been our common practice when we get the written resignation, we post, we move forward so that we can have that communication become official at board meetings.
Any questions?
All right.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right, and then we will invite up our Buildings and Grounds Director. Ken, come on up,
Hot chair.
up to the hot seat. You got it.
Well, lucky for you guys, my computer's got plenty of battery.
Oh.
Oh. Football field lights update. So Design Electric will be coming to trench the line in this Thursday or Friday. So you'll see some marking going on again over there. With that whole thing when Voss did that sewer line last week, right? last week, they found that wire, the old wire that was there, and it was interesting because they called me out there because they found it, and I went and looked in the trench when they found it, and I'm like, yeah, that looks old, and it was, and but they dug underneath it like they're supposed to do, and they were doing their work down there, and there was a splice off to the side of that wire, and just the weight of the wire, it just broke that splice. So they were concerned if there was power in it, so I had to get somebody out here real quick and just, let's make sure nobody dies in this hole today, so. Yeah, there was a dead wire, and it is in tough shape, so. The water leak under the football field was fixed, Voss did help with that, I don't know how they're gonna build that, cause I feel part of that was theirs, so, didn't even really talk to them about it, but I probably should have, but, anyway. Tennis courts, on the Parks and Tree Committee, and I had that, Sorensen working on that with the township. She has not got back to me. I have texted her twice. She did say it takes some time sometimes, but I'm like, I don't know if she has gone forward with the township. I did go through the Parks and Tree Committee with it, and they want some surveying questionnaires put out there. Now, I haven't seen personally anybody out there yet this summer.
Not yet.
At all, so I don't know if these are just not getting used. I've been trying to pay attention to that. So that's one reason if we'd have a little questionnaire out there that they could fill out if they're out there playing tennis on how many people are actually using it, if it's worthwhile moving forward and keeping them, or if 10 people to be for a later date. So I did kind of put that whole thing on hold. I may move the fence yet, but if we're gonna dig the whole thing up, and I maybe wanna do it all at one time, so.
Are they usable at all?
They're in tough shape. They really are. We did spray the weeds on the ones that are getting used, so the crack line weeds. They're thick, they're wide. It's in not good shape.
Yes, I don't know how many people use the thing either, but if it's really bad shape, you're not gonna get huge numbers.
That is true.
So you might not be able to get a good read on that one, and I know over the years, we've talked about trying to get the city and the township both to
And
don't
they,
participate, because we don't have a school program of tennis, and so how do we take the school's money
right.
for the students and stick into that thing?
And they are absolutely, I talked to them about that, and the city for sure was interested in helping out with that. They were like, we're not gonna say no to that at all, because they do feel that it does get used somewhat,
Okay,
so.
Does the pack get used for tennis at all?
Never seen tennis.
Knowing that,
We can, it's capable,
When
but
it first opened,
I know it's capable.
there was a couple in there
Set up
playing
for it,
tennis. That's
yeah.
the only time I've seen it.
And to be honest with you, part of, I think, what would happen with the outdoor tennis courts is they would be multi-purpose. If they would be redone, they would also contain pickleball lines. And so then you'd have your pickleball players who come and play all winter long. Some of them go play in their communities in the summer that have outdoor courts, but they may come back to our, if we're more central, they could come here and
that
I
was
expect that to be a bigger.
everybody would like to see the multi-purpose court with the pickleball in it, so. Everybody had talked to, so.
so what would it cost to refurbish the thing, you got any idea? Are we talking hundreds of thousands of dollars kind of thing?
Yeah, it's expensive.
It's a couple $100,000.
Really hard to think.
I think a lot of it, I don't know for sure, but I do think a lot of it was them roots. If you kind of look at them, and then we've got a property line on the east side over there that weren't even ours, so we can't even really touch them, because they would go with they're more of a bush.
Yeah.
But I just kind of looked at it, and it still kind of looks like maybe the roots going underneath there. So,
But we
it's
didn't,
hard to say.
we had periods of time where a lot of maintenance kind of went under the table because we had no money for any of that stuff. And not that we have piles of money right now, but it had to slide, it wasn't, it was the last on the list of priority.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, I think that was one of the ongoing discussions around the tennis courts is even if we were able to find a cost sharing, having that commitment to maintaining those because of that issue, because of how if you aren't paying attention to the root systems, if you aren't paying attention to minor cracks, if you're not doing the maintenance work, now you've put money into it and it's not gonna be sustainable. So we, as all of these discussions have been taking place, it's been about sustainability of that maintenance as well, so.
I guess what else could you put there? I mean, it's kind of dead space,
Well,
isn't it, really?
Yeah, I would seed it in right now and hope for something come up in the future.
Because there's really no other place you could put something like that unless, right? I mean, that's just,
I would agree
it was
with
just
that.
kind of strategically placed there, if I recall. And you really can't put anything else there, so, yeah, you got some tough work ahead.
Do we know how other, schools handle tennis courts, or are they mostly done by cities?
I know New London just did theirs. They've got a beautiful park. Donick, I would say they put $500,000 into it, plus maybe. Four quarter, do they have, you know, Rick, if they have a tennis program in their school?
They used to.
I think they do.
I think they do.
So it is really
A few years.
gorgeous. It's really nice. Just completed it. Wilmer just put one in. No, Wilmer did the pickleball, straight pickleball courts. So, and I was talking actually to Donick, and he did all of them. So,
In a lot of places, it's the city, Richmond's got a beautiful pickleball setup now, well, it's not quite done yet, but up at Centennial Park. How many pickleball courts they got up there now?
So that would be city.
But that was city, yeah, so,
It'd be kind of interesting to know, you know, we know what the size of our community is, we know how big the school is. Wonder where,
and maybe
Maybe
that's something, you know,
similar to
I
where-
didn't actually pitch that to the park and tree that way. Maybe that would be a better pitch, that, you know, other cities are just doing this.
Yep.
So. Any more questions on the tennis?
If the city were amenable to taking care of building the courts and possibly maintaining them, would we be all right with leaving it out of the school grounds?
I think that would be a discussion to have if the city was serious about, the discussion.
I agree. Student Center, looks great in there. I did thank Kapsner for that. He did a nice job with his students, went in there and got it all cleaned up and all the corners on. It looks great. So nothing unfinished anymore. So fixing the sewer line, kind of touched base on that already. They came in and Voss has their part all done. Couple days they were in and out. They really move a lot of dirt with that big equipment. And just keep at it. And so now the pipe, whatever you want to call them, inside liner guys are coming mid-June here to finish that up. So that'll be they told me a 1-day project. They'll be in and out real quick. So Cass, you mentioned the mulch did come and it was in tough shape. Both of them, we did put some out here at the high school as well on that one behind the baseball field. So. And gotta thank Bruce Stagg, he let me use his trailer for that, so that was nice of him, get it done a little quicker and easier, so. And, summer has begun, and there's work, going well. It's going well, I gotta say, it's, you know, some things you just really don't really notice when the kids are hustle and bustle of each day, and then they're gone, and we start going in the classrooms and start tearing everything out of it, and I'm like, dang, there's a lot of stuff in there first of all, and then, you know, the floors, get them all clean and walls, looking at a bunch of stuff in rooms. You know, some of them can use a little facelift that doesn't cost a lot of money and just keep rolling forward, so. Any other questions?
so I don't mean to be a broken record on this, but I'm still curious on roofs. But do we have that in motion somewhere?
I did have a couple roof guys out, we're still in the process of doing that. And actually, you know, I've got the sheet. And the oldest roof on the building, everybody claims is not the worst roof on this building. And I've had 3 people out. I've only got 1 quote back. Don't remember what it was for, 20-some thousand. But where they put the air exchangers and all that stuff for the new facility in the end, the pack, there is serious tenting going on, what they call tenting, and you can see it, you go up there and this rubber is stretching, it's pulling away from the wall and it is stretching tight like a tent. And they're all saying that's bad, that can rip anytime, you know, and I don't go up and look at it every day. So that can rip at any time and that needs to be fixed.
That's on the new facility?
It's not, they put the air exchangers for the new facility on top of it. Okay, so, so I've got the one quote back, I'd have to dig for it a little bit in here if you wanna see it, I can definitely email it to you and so on, that was from, I am not even gonna speculate.
Well, my real curiosity is when we're dealing with our budgets and everything, the roofs are mega money. And we gotta have them.
Say that again, the roofs are
The
what?
roofs are mega money, and
Oh,
we gotta have the roofs. And when we're trying to do more long-range planning, we kinda need to know, like, when we, use some of our levy funds to do projects this year, well, we gotta know where we're gonna be at 10 years from now with roof levies or roof jobs that gotta come through. And so, and I think it was about at the end of the plan. The last one I saw was kinda
No,
at the end.
we've been, looking in the next couple, so last year, it was maybe 2 years out. Within the next 5 years, we've got some significant money set aside that we're understanding that we've got to do some things with our roofs.
Okay,
So there's no, Bruce, so it's in there.
I think even
In July, actually, we'll take a look at the long-term facility maintenance plan and you'll see roof repair budgeted in there.
well, and what happened to us is we would have dates that we thought the roofs were gonna need repaired.
Yeah.
Well, then things came up, sometimes it was a year or two later, but it was continually in that plan.
Right.
We all knew that we had to come up with it somehow, and it was a long stretch.
Yep.
I think we were doing it over 10 years to see about where we were at.
Yep. And we do still do that, and I think one of the things that I really think Ken kind of mentioned that he's had people kind of coming out and looking at. You can look at your building and if, for instance, when the initial plan was done that maybe laid out the section of the roof that would be the next one to be done. Well, now we did the PAC project, you put those air handlers on top of an old spot, now you've got a different issue. So you have to be responsive and really
Yep.
know. So I think you have the money there and then you work with the professionals to say, where's our money best spent in this context?
Yep.
Through the roof system.
The toughest thing with the roofs is nobody sees it.
Right.
So the only thing they'll see is when the leaks are coming through and all your
They see
tiles are
bottom
shot
floor.
inside the
They sure
building.
do.
But you're putting all that money up there and nobody even knows that it's there, and we just gotta have a kind of.
And I do believe on that, I think there is like money every year, isn't there like 20 grand on that line?
There's
I
some
think there
maintenance
is
money
some
and then
maintenance
there's
money
big
there.
money.
And there was a big chunk here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've
That
been
maintenance-
working on that
At
too.
one point in time, I thought we had almost Rick and Sheriff for sure would remember, I thought we had a $500,000 in a levy. Didn't we have about $1 million levy where we started something and we had $500,000, I think, in roofs? That's, what, 10 years ago? Dude, it doesn't take much roof and it's really expensive, but
Roofing is.
I just wanna make sure we're keeping track of that one, cause that's a real scary one.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, if they were all pitched and they would last 100 years, we wouldn't deal with this.
Oh, Bruce.
That section of the roof that you're talking about that has the air exchangers on, that would make total sense that the wear and tear in that area is gonna be a lot worse, or it's not gonna last near as long as the different part. So,
Yeah, they're
and that has nothing to do as far as downgrading.
They're claiming it's not, they said the actual roof part underneath the tenting, so it's just where the roof goes up the wall, where that rubber membrane goes up the wall, is pulling away. They're saying the middle is fine, and they are very pleased with the way they put the air handlers up there, off the roof, so you guys can work underneath it.
Yeah, no, I'm
So-
not criticizing that, but I think from a common sense
Oh,
standpoint,
yeah.
as far as Minnesota, our seasons, and then when you put any type of air exchange or moisture, there's gonna be more stress in that area. So yeah, I would totally understand why that may take a little more to maintain than an area that doesn't have that equipment on top of it, so.
And it's actually all the roofs that were put on, I'm guessing now, but I think it was 2001 roofs. Because it actually is up in front, underneath that big air conditioner up there too. That's got it, it's not nearly as bad. up there, but it does have it, and it was the same company that put that entire roof on. Don't remember who that was either.
But there's still that greater chance of stress being on that
Yep.
part of the roof.
Yep.
It's gotta be fixed, it's gotta be fixed.
All right,
Anything else? Thank you, guys.
okay, thank you.
Get to move on to the fun stuff.
Now we'll move on. All right, budget. Oh, I just clicked out of my, my agenda. Okay, so next on the agenda is budget development. So I am going to share this out with individuals as well. Whoops. So there's two things here, and the first thing I'm gonna do is just walk through the slideshow, and then I will click on, so in the budget development first slide, there's a hyperlink to what is our traditional budget document, and we'll look at that second. But I'm gonna start by just I will just play Jeepers Creepers.
Other windows and start slideshow.
Under other thank you, this one.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, so a couple of things. So this is our budget snapshot budget at a snapshot. So you'll see the funds that are broken out. We generally talk about our general fund, which is Fund 1. We have food service, the community ed, our capital fund, construction, debt service, and student activity accounts. When we look at our budget on our spreadsheet that's more broken down, each of those are broken into the areas that are fee-based, the areas that are restricted to be specific to whether it was a levy that came in, like examples like roofing. We have some of those things broken out on the more detailed sheet. But here's where you can kind of see our projected ending fiscal year 23 fund balance, and then our projected balance at the end of fiscal year 24. So a couple of things that I want to talk through, and you'll see that this references our original budget is 911 ADMs. Okay, that's kind of important to remember because it helps to understand and explain why it's a little bit more than it was when we had initially started talking. So a couple of things to take a look at. So the fiscal year 24 budget assumptions. So we started this conversation back in about February. If you remember, in February, we were still facing a deficit budget. We did not have our budget allocation from the legislature, and we also were looking at about 897 students, which is what our count was last year, okay? So this budget is projected and built on a 4% increase on the formula. So you'll see that per pupil goes from 6,863 up to 7,138. So not only did we have an increase in the percentage, but we also had an increase in students. So that's good when it comes to the revenue just in the general fund. A couple of other things that came in from funding from the legislature that have specific context that we need to account for. The media specialist and the student support aide, each of those positions are allocated $40,000, but they have to be used for those positions. Okay, so that's one of the things that came into our calculations. We have a staff member who is currently licensed as a media specialist. So what we will likely do, and this isn't set in stone, but what we will likely do is assign that individual to cover the mandated duties and the stuff that we have to do with that in order to get the $40,000 funding. But then we'll have to backfill that position because that individual had a job with us, right? So we have to look at how to support that position as we transition to get that $40,000 of aid. Student support aid, that again is also $40,000. So those two positions are cumulatively $80,000 for our district. That position we are going to be able to cover because we transitioned to an elementary school social worker. So if you remember midway through the year when we weren't able to fill the position that Ms. Wers resigned last spring, we were able to hire a social worker that's targeting specifically the elementary. That's a perfect correlation to the student support aid, so we'll be able to use that revenue to offset that position.
So are any of those on a long-term budget or is this 1 year? So are we gonna be in a position where we're bringing people in to fill those positions and then have them cut the funding and then we have to?
Yeah, no, my understanding is these are intended to be long-term. If it's one-time money in the in the allocation, it's written as a grant of one-time money.
Yeah, so
Okay.
we might not have an inflation rider with this specifically, but the 40,000 is gonna stay for. a
That will
series of
stay for
years.
those, yep.
Gotcha.
So the cross subsidy aid, and this is another one, so cross subsidy for our district was really substantial. So that you all kind of understand what cross subsidy is, and this, when I was a special education director, I talked about this all the time. Special education is it's a program that we have requirements, we have mandates that we have to staff. And and this is every school district in the state of Minnesota. The federal government has really not kept up with their funding as they promised back in the origination of IDEA. And then states have not had a plethora of money to put in to support special education services either. So then what happened is school districts, after you provided your service and you got your state aid from the federal government or the state, the balance of that was called your cross subsidy, okay? So our school district, all school districts in the state of Minnesota in this allocation receive 44% of their cross subsidy, okay? The cross subsidy was always just covered out of your general fund. Okay, so it's like they're required expenses, there's no aid, you paid for it out of your general fund. This is an advocacy that has taken place at the legislature since I started as a special education director 10 years ago. So this has been, when they were talking about this, we all were hopeful, but until we saw it actually come through, we didn't know what the dollars were gonna be. So our 44% is almost $400,000 for our school district. That was huge, and that was not something that we banked on. Next year, the allocation is set to be, so this year was 44%, I believe next year is set to be 52% of your cross subsidy. I don't know, to your point, what the long-term percentage of that is going to be. So I think we really need to be responsible with that funding in case it does not maintain over the course of time. I do think it will be there in some capacity because there's been a recognition of that cost and how that does impact a district's budget. Yet it is something that we received this year to the tune of about $400,000, okay? So some assumptions that we made from expenditures, we included steps and lanes for our cost purposes. And when we initially had the conversation back in February and March, we made our steps and lanes and just slight increases because we didn't know what our percentage was going to be from the state. Again, as a reminder, next year's percentage from the state is 2%. So this year is 4% and next year is 2%, okay? We did include the 12% increase in health insurance premiums. Last year, our teachers union agreed to engage in a conversation with our health partners provider to get a 3-year guarantee on our health insurance cost. So last year was a 10% increase, this year is 12, and next year will be 12 as well. So that was something that was important, and now we can budget for it, and we know what those costs are gonna be. We also budgeted in our TRA employer contribution increase. So this was legislatively set. It went from 8.55 up to 8.75% for the employer. We also, just as a kind of a reminder, and I put that in, I updated it from last year. So our expenditure budget is 79% salaries and benefits and 21% other expenditures. So it's, again, just a reminder that we are in the people, our business is people. We work with people, we work with kids, and our staff work with our kids. So just a reminder on that, that context. We also took into account that kindergarten will run with 4 sections as opposed to 3, okay? So some other assumptions that came in as we looked at this, food service. So we know that food service, all of our students will receive a free breakfast and a free lunch. We have not yet received the federal rates in order to set our fee schedule for an extra entree or an adult lunch. Those all are part of our food service program. And I'm hoping that we have those before the July board meeting, because that's usually when we set the fee schedule. If we need to reset it and revisit that, it's not a big deal. But those rates the federal rates are set by the Department of Education and the U.S. Department of Agriculture. A couple of things that we've done from a food service perspective. Our second chance breakfast, which is only available at the secondary building, will be cash only. We trialed that the second semester and it went really well. And then we also talked about changing the way that our extra entrees are available so that our students go through the lunch line first and then they eat their lunch and then they come back, and if they're still hungry, they get a second entree. Why that becomes important is we're sitting at almost $15,000 in a deficit lunch balance. So some of those are families that have carried year over year. And we have never excluded a child from eating lunch, and we've never addressed a lunch balance with children. We send communication to families, and sometimes they're just not able to pay. The second chance breakfast and having a second breakfast and a second lunch, that was one of those areas where we just made some determinations that we needed to see if how that would be different for kids adding on just extra lunches and extra entrees. I think sometimes parents weren't aware that their kids were adding extra entrees, or their parents weren't aware that they were eating 2 breakfasts. And so those are a couple of things that steps we've taken to hopefully eliminate some of that overcharging and make sure that parents are aware of what their kids are having for breakfast and lunch.
Just
Yep.
double check your now. So second chance breakfast, cash only?
Yep.
Is that also true then for the extra entree?
We've not made that determination yet. Second chance breakfast is a little bit different in the sense that you're not running a full meal. You're not running your full lunch line at that moment in time. So one of the quandaries if you run the cash for the extra entree is now you've got your lunch people who are serving food also dealing with cash money. So we've kind of gone back and forth on that, whether that seems to make sense or if it doesn't make sense. It's certainly something that we'll see how it goes this fall. And if we're finding we've got a lot of really low lunch balances, that might be something that we can take a look at.
My concern is that trying to get away from the charging and having to worry about
Right.
trying to collect.
Right. Yep. And it's, I'm hopeful with this change that an all lunch being free, that perhaps we can get back to a positive balance so that parents, they're able to put in what they want their children to have, and then kids can charge what they need to.
Because when we get back, because now it's against the law for us to stop a kid and say you can't eat.
Correct.
But if we're giving them a free lunch and then they come back for a second lunch and we say, at that point, can we say, no, you can't have a second lunch?
We cannot withhold food from our students. Even, and if it is cash, that does change the context.
Right. Then you
Yeah.
can say it's either cash or you don't.
Yeah. And we've administratively, we've been talking about that, but we haven't made a final determination as to whether it's going to be but that we did find that the second chance breakfast being cash only did really work well for the second semester. And I think that started, I wanna say, probably the third week of June or January. Second semester was about the third week, January 20-ish, something like that. So that's when we implemented that change, and it went well. Okay. So our capital funds, we've taken into account our subscriptions and licenses. When you talked about the LTFM projects, so those are things that are taken into account there. One of the things that that we are taking into account as we're looking at that, and Bruce, you kind of referenced setting aside some money to pay for the long-term, indoor air quality project, making sure that we try to keep our long-term facility maintenance money whole to do the projects that we know are coming. And we're gonna talk a little bit more about some of these projects as we're coming up as well, but, so kind of making that bond payment back into that from our capital funds is something that we've taken into consideration as well. The menstrual product aids are in there, that's approximately $1,900 for our school district, and that is coming through our capital funds. So there's not a separate entity line item, but it is designated into our capital funds. The capital funds are a part of where we would look at our, like we've talked about, our tennis courts, our track and field, our tracks, our general field maintenance, restoration and upkeep. So those are all things that we've been taking a look at. As we met with our facilities committee and tried to lay out how are we gonna strategically start looking at things like our, looking down on the next line, our ongoing building maintenance needs. So taking a look at our roofs, taking a look at our transitioning to LED lighting. Our LED lighting is expensive to get to at the front end, but it's a cost savings down the road because of your light bulbs and the way that and if anybody is walked through our buildings, you can see just the variation in our coloration of the lights just because of how frequently they need to be changed. You'll also see that as we've talked about planning for our field project, there's a significant cost a significant cost increase from the initial concept and design from the redesign of, for example, our softball field or our track and resurfacing and everything over the course of the last few years. We all know what has happened with construction, and it's been no different in our facilities conversations either. So those are things that we have taken into consideration as we're looking at long-term planning in addition to this budget, okay? And then our debt service, our bond repayments are according to a schedule, and so that was taken into account as we looked at our budget as well. So in anticipation of a deficit budget, just as a reminder to some of the things that we took a look at, we did reduce our German due to a lack of participation. We also did not fill the science retirement that took place this spring and moving into next year. The secondary .2 social studies course, so I just want to speak to that a little bit. The reason the course that we're talking about here is our macroeconomics course, and what that was is that course was taught by an instructor who was grandfathered into the requirements to teach that college level course. Last year was the last year, and the instructor had retired and agreed to come back to teach that class so that our students could have that college level credit. She would no longer have been able to teach that class because she didn't have the right collegiate credits and degree to align with the course instructor. I won't get started on my soapbox about that requirement, but it is what it is, and we're grateful for the amount of time that she was able to give us. She also was doing our district assessment coordinator duties, and so as she was transitioning out from that social studies, we also naturally looked at absorbing that responsibility into our administrative team, so that was another cost savings that we took a look at. We've been doing a lot of analysis of staffing. We also had some severance decreases with staff that were coming off of our severance responsibilities, and there's only 2 coming on. So those are some of the things that came into consideration when we initially started this conversation of our budget. So some variables and increases, we did increase the kindergarten
So
support.
just real quick,
Go ahead.
before the last slide.
Yep.
So we will see this and be put back into the budget with these deficits as far as being applied back with those
No.
reductions.
Nope.
We will not see that.
Nope, those were reductions that have been applied as we came into the budget.
Okay, that's what I meant, okay.
Yep.
Yep, it's already there.
So I am not recommending that we add these back.
Right, no, I don't wanna add it back.
Oh.
What I wanna know is as far as that, the money that we had that went to
Oh.
these, they're back into the budget.
yes.
When you did that, okay.
Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't understand. Yes,
No.
you got it.
Okay.
Yep. So some variables and increases, so kindergarten hire to support four kindergarten sections. Our kindergarten class was 68, our senior class is 84. So at this point it was 84. Mr. Orline, I think, reported 86. So it's kind of, it does vary over the course of, and it's going to vary over the course of the school year, but,
Is it common that the kindergarten class grows a little bit? Cause it
A
used
little
to be, we had a hard time with that number.
Yeah.
And when I saw the 4 people there, my thought was that somebody's anticipating we're gonna end up with 70, 75 kids, and then we're short-staffed immediately. Isn't that?
and that's the fear. So when we were having this conversation last year, I wanna say that our kindergarten, we were anticipating 62.
Yep.
And now we're sitting at 68 right from the get-go.
Right.
And I believe, and if Cassie were here, I would ask, but I believe there might be a couple of students that we know are likely going to be coming into this class as well. So I think, I still would recommend the 4. It makes sense, and I think that it's the right
Everything I
thing to
have
do.
read, everything I have looked at says that if you get the kids started on the right track, that if you're gonna spend the money, that's where spend it with the really young kids.
Yep.
To get them started in a motion that makes the rest of their schooling probably a lot easier for them.
Yep.
That's kind of the philosophy.
We've also tried to take into account the unemployment costs for non-certified staff. So what we're banking on is probably, and this is, in full transparency, this is a crapshoot, because we don't know how much of the $135 million from the state we will get. And we don't know how long that money will last across the state until it's gone. And once it's gone, it is gone. What we do know is that we calculated that we could possibly have about $140,000 of expenditures in unemployment costs for the summer. That was not in, so what we conservatively kind of looked at is if we could get $100,000 in reimbursement, then it would maybe only cost us $40,000 out of our budget. So again, this is a moving target. And I'm being really honest with you that we don't know how it's going to come out, but we do know what our potential costs could be, and we're hoping for some of that to be reimbursed this year. We do know that when that $135 million that was allocated to the unemployment insurance through MDE, when that's gone, it is gone. The other thing that we know is that our bus drivers are also eligible for unemployment, but we are not able, because that's a contract, we are not able to submit that for reimbursement. So those are just some things that we continue to keep our eyes on.
Well, if it becomes a cost, we might see it.
So for them, if it becomes a cost, I expect it to be passed on to us.
And this kind of, at 100 and whatever, kind of makes that 4% a 3% for this year and continuing. These are the lace things, that it all sounds really good up front, but when we come down to running the school, there's less money coming in.
Those are
And things like that are a big deal.
So we also took a look at maintaining some increased sub costs. So you'll see from 21-22, we had $124,000 in sub costs. 22-23, we had approximately $90,000 in sub costs. And what we're looking at in 23-24 is again about 117. Just went up slightly, but not not as high as we had in 21-22. But those are things that we're trying to take into account as well. We've also gone from 6 career increments in 22-23 to 7 in 23-24. We know that all contracts are in negotiations right now. And we also know that we are allocating into this budget a curriculum cycle of $40,000. We've talked about curriculum administratively for quite a long time, really kind of going back and forth of really what is it that our district needs. We have a lot of innovative staff that are working on aligning the work that they are doing with our state standards and really making sure that that what our students are learning is consistent, but we also have to make sure that we have foundational foundational resource and to draw from. And I don't anticipate you hearing from me that we should ever spend $100,000 on a boxed curriculum that just you take and go, because there's, I don't know that there's ever been anything that will do everything that needs to be done. But I do think we need to allocate some money and make sure that we are able to meet the needs of our staff as well. The other thing that I think is going to be important is to really try designating some funds into a restricted fund in order to really address some of those things that you were talking about, Bruce. I think as we've looked at, one of the things that I'm going to talk about is some of our ongoing things that we know are coming that really have been kind of pushed aside as we've been in a deficit budget. And I think it's really important to not lose sight of that as we look at moving forward. We also considered the structure of our technology department. Again, it is budget neutral from a financial perspective, and I think long-term it will serve our district really well. Jonah had done a great job really setting up our district to be in a very sound place so that we don't have to build any longer. We're able to maintain and sustain. And there's a big difference when you're talking about technology, about rebuilding versus maintenance and sustaining. And I think that in that, having that network and infrastructure where it needs to be allowed us to take a look at a different structure for our technology department. We wouldn't have been able to do that had we not been where we are from our structure perspective. As we're looking at multi-year planning for our athletic fields, softball, football, and track, I referenced that the cost for those areas have come in considerably higher than when that discussion took place in 2019, I believe it was. I did have send an email to our softball subcommittee group to come back after I had a conversation with Mr. Tessier from Safe Engineering, and it's staggering to look at how those costs have increased. Again, it's not out of line with anybody else. I don't know why I thought it would be any different for us, but I just was maybe hopeful. But those are things that we have to be really mindful of.
I think the multiple years, to me, is the big thing there.
Yeah.
Because if we could just get a plan in place of kind of what we think should happen, and then as we're able, do parts of it. But don't haphazardly go in and do this, and then this has got to all be redone to get the whole complex together. And I think that we went from maybe a complex into multi-years where we could get it done in parts, but on a specific plan.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I'm suggesting we take a look at as we look long-term from a funding perspective and how we budget. Those are things that have to be taken into consideration for sure. Crisis planning is something that has come to our forefront, I think, through a couple of different perspectives over the course of the last year. And one of the things that came up through that as well is our PA system in this building and the elementary. The elementary's a little, I would say maybe a little bit better, but they both really need some analysis, because from a communication perspective in a crisis, and you never want to be the one that has the system that's not functional when you need it to be functional. But those are things that we're looking at. How can we use the funding over the course of the next few years to replace those? And all of those things, unfortunately, for example, when the quote that I had from Jonah from 2 years ago was about $275,000 for a PA system. That connects both of our buildings, and then we'd have the capacity to be integrated. But that was a couple of years ago as well, right? So those are things now we have to really be thinking of and watching as we're analyzing how we're using funds over the course of the next few years. The other piece.
Some of our equipment is so old that we can't even buy stuff for it, last I knew.
Correct.
So we kind of got to figure something out there. It's not like a whole lot of choices, so.
To that, in that similar vein, you know, some of our door systems, you know, we've talked about when our emergency responders come to our building, how do they get into our building? You know, our key systems are great, our fob system is wonderful with power, but when you don't have power, how are the keys working? Well, those are some problem areas that we've identified that we've got, we have some vulnerabilities. I don't know how many of you have paid attention to how much it costs to rekey a building or take a look at putting new locks on doors. And Bruce, I'm gonna suggest that that's similar to roofing. It's a lot of money and it doesn't look nice. I mean, you're like, what am I getting for this money? But we have to think, that's part of, I think, as I'm making this recommendation to you in our budget, those are some of the things that our administrative team has been talking about, is those are important, and we recognize that they're not flashy, right? The other thing to be mindful of, and I kind of pointed out that we have 87 kids graduating in May of next year, and 67 kindergartners coming in. So that's a loss of about $194,000 in revenue purely based on that change of kids leaving or really up coming in. And I think that's something that we have to really be thoughtful about as we look at our budget, knowing that next year there's gonna be a change, okay? So those are some of the considerations that came into play as we've been developing the budget.
But really, Janelle, on that last one, we don't know what that is.
Those are based on our current census.
We know what's going out and we know what's coming in this year. We don't know what's coming in next year.
We have a census of our 4-year-olds.
Yeah.
Yep. So it's
But that's
variable.
not what that number is.
That's
I understand.
67, yes.
That's that number.
That's our census.
That's a census number.
Yep.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep.
Okay, because it's, what is it, this year right now is 68, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And Gerald, you're right, those can change. And
No, now that I understand that, because when I went through this before, kind of looked through it, I saw those numbers, I guess I didn't equate that was one number different.
oh, yeah.
So I wasn't sure how that was, how you drive that. Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
So where that comes from, so Carrie has Carrie, our business manager, has a spreadsheet that kind of tracks our 3-year-olds, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, of when they should go to kindergarten, when they might go, you know, so you've got, it really is parent choice. There are some parents that may not choose. There are some students that maybe didn't go this year that might go next year, so but that's the numbers of where that comes from, is from the census data, okay? So, the next thing that I'll show you just so that you all kind of can see, what we're gonna dig into, let me go back to the front, is, whoops. So this is our draft budget. So for current board members, for current board members, this is the document that you'll see pretty consistently. The biggest, I guess, most pertinent number that we often look at, I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger before I share it. Okay. There we go. So the biggest number that we really look at is that general fund, right? Because that's these other funds that I referenced that are assigned, or they have areas that are really restricted. Those are broken down below, and you can see each of those. We're gonna talk a little bit about Q-Comp when we're done talking about the budget, and I'll get into that a little bit later. You'll see some of those restricted accounts, compensatory revenue we've talked a lot about from in correlation to the free and reduced lunch. Food service fund we've talked about that, you know, and when you see a number like a restricted with a type of a number, that's an accounting code that there have to be specific expenditures that are used within that coding system. So we can't take like our food service revenue and apply that toward teacher salaries, for example. Or in a similar way, we can't take our community education funding and apply that to the roof system, right? So it's just kind of knowing that's those funds are broken out in that manner. The really the bottom line is this general fund that's unassigned, which is our beginning fund balance. You'll look at our revenue. Our projected revenue is $10,021,531. Our projected expenditures are $9,422,368. So we're hoping to be able to put $599,000 into our fund balance. Again, I'm hopeful that really does come to fruition in that way. I think it's a responsible way for us to start looking and tackling the things that have been neglected over the last 4 to 5 years when we've been in a deficit budget. So with that, I will open it up for additional questions. Thank you for asking along the way. I think it makes it easier.
I like the first presentation of the financial stuff better than this.
I know you do. I know. Yep. Okay.
So how are you gonna lay out in the strategic plan these things? Cause you know, I do like the fact that you're looking at, let's set up something that is a restricted budget, or a restricted budget or bucket. They'll start putting money in for those future things that are gonna go out there. But how are we gonna look at that in the strategic plan, to have that understanding of, okay, we're starting to put money into this and it's gonna go for the roofs, or we're gonna put money in this to do maintenance upkeeps for locks, things like that. But where's that gonna be at then in the strategic plan? Cause we can't start next year with that. How far out do you think that needs to be before we start?
So there's a couple, yep.
Dip into it.
Yep, well, there's a couple of ways that it's already done, that we already have this done.
Okay.
So, one, our strategic plan really talks about us being fiscally responsible. So that's
Right,
really the anchor of our strategic plan.
Okay, yep, no, agree.
Within that, we have our long-term facility maintenance plan, and that's something that the board approves every July, okay? Within that long-term facility maintenance plan, you're gonna see, so in July, you'll see a breakdown of, these are some of the projects that are out here.
Gotcha, okay,
Yep, so it helps to really guide some of that work, right?
okay,
So each of, and for example, you know, last month we approved we walked through the achievement and integration plan. So that has some funding that's associated or that comes in from that plan. And then that plan outlines how those expenditures align.
gotcha, yeah.
So all of it is part of our district's kind of, I view those as fiscal responsibility and fiscal stewardship because we're working within the means or planning along the way with our long-term facility maintenance plan and then our facilities committee work. So
Yep.
You know, if you'd like it to look different or be incorporated into the strategic plan differently, it certainly can be. I mean, we can talk about that in July and what that could look like.
Yeah, let's do that. No, I like that. I guess I asked the question a month too early, but I like that. It's just that something has to be the master plan of, we know. I think everything has to have a something that's set up under committees that is separate, but just in that master plan of looking at it, knowing that we have certain things that under this here, we need to then take a look at it and see what is that breakdown under.
And
I like that, no, I like that, you know.
Yep, and I'll look to, you know, Cheryl and Bruce and Rick that prior to my tenure, I would guess, and prior to some pretty significant deficit budget expenditures, there was a plan that had facilities at the forefront. And so I would say it's a bit of an evolution of, do you move forward with a softball complex when you're having to reduce teaching staff.
Right, yeah.
And I think as a board, what I heard is that we need to maintain our staff when possible. So, I think those are out there, Gerald, and also I'll kind of look to and Thomas. You're only 4.
I'm only in year 5, so.
You're only year 5, but still, is that kind of an accurate?
Well, I can tell you, when Cheryl and I first started, we always felt the girls softball was lacking over there. And that was a fund, that one number I remember was $200,000 set aside for us to do that. Well, where is that? And so when you start setting them up, it gets very hard, but it's exactly what Janelle says. It was a great idea, but when it came right down to it, and we were $100,000 over breaking even, guess what? That 200 wasn't there anymore, and we didn't have any choice. And then we talked about with the strategic plan, part of that was keeping track of those items so that when you have those deficit budgets, it seemed like, my impression all the way over the years was, we hit those times, and then all these great plans we have just dissipated out to the backside. We got through the mess, kind of, and then,
Transfer.
yeah, but never got it back.
It'll come
And
back.
so, some of what I see we're doing, strategic plan is one of them. We have that third category, put that stuff down there. Just because we may still have that happen to us, but if 5 years go by and we're back on track, we need to remember that, and it won't be us, it'll be other boards.
Right.
And so we all kind of scramble as to what were we all thinking? And again, it goes back to like planting the fields thing. Well, lots of things can happen. What if that process of planting the fields is now 10 years long? Well, are we gonna maintain kind of what we were doing? Or do we go through one of those cycles and then all of a sudden we're haphazardly putting it in? Oh, this is the plan they had years ago and now you see what I'm saying? We're trying to avoid that. And I'm hoping that the strategic plan will be that. The facilities have an Excel sheet that we started when we got aboard. Honestly, that Excel sheet is really nice because there's lots of room to maintain things. And you can hold them on there and you can just, if you can't do it, you can just take that number and slide it down a couple years, but we don't lose track of our thoughts. And I would hope school boards in the future will do the same thing as what we're trying to do.
I guess we can talk about more next month.
Or July,
And not that I know everything, but I think it's a good conversation here to kind of get my mind going on some things. And
That's the greatest part of this meeting.
just recommendations.
No, I have a question too, but is there a way of getting some figures, or at least even a graph that shows the ending balance over the last 5 years, 10 years?
Of the fund balance?
Yeah, because right now it's like somebody looking at it and saying, oh, $600,000 added to it. Is that above? No, it's probably not above and beyond. It might only be getting us back up to where we were 3 years ago.
Yeah, I can do that.
That's kind of, would be helpful for me to have if someone were to ask a question.
Yep, I will have that prepared for the
We
next
did
meeting.
that when we went out for the last
We
referendum.
did.
And if that was that chart extended, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's easy to explain to somebody then, so this is kind of what's happened. We don't have that information
Yeah.
readily accessible.
I can do that, yep. Yep. For sure, okay. So then the next, am I okay to move on?
Yep.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is just a real quick review of our QComp plan. So QComp is a program that not every district in the state of Minnesota has access to. It is an application process. We just completed our 7th year as a QComp school. What it is there's an application that's submitted, and it was submitted in conjunction with our teachers union. The board, I believe, approved the plan, and then it was also with administration. And the intent of it is to access funding from the state of Minnesota to really grow and develop our teachers. The plan for staff to engage in professional learning communities with really the intent of focusing on student achievement and student growth, developing their own professional goals, and then having checkpoints throughout the year so that they are able to reflect on their own professional growth and then how they did at the end of the year. It provides compensation for them to be part of committees that are embedded throughout the school year. And ultimately what it does is it provides an opportunity for our certified staff to receive up to approximately $1,300 on top of their existing salary within the master agreement. Individuals who are leaders within the QComp committee and QComp within the QComp team also receive an additional $500 to $1,000 for their leadership of that team. So our application has been pretty consistent over the last few years. There has not been a lot of strategic change to it. And our district has not accessed levy dollars to support our QComp. We have just received the money from the state of Minnesota. So this has really been money that has come in from the state, and there has been no additional impact. So it's a great benefit for our staff, and it also then is not money that comes out of our general fund as well. So any questions about QComp or what it is or how it works? This is just really, when we submit our World's Best Workforce Plan, the work that they do within QComp, so the professional learning communities, the growth targets that they have for their classrooms or for the building as a whole, for their student performance, all of those align with our QComp or with our World's Best Workforce Plan, our Read Well plan. They all kind of correlate and correspond. So it is a requirement that this QComp information is presented to the board in the spring of the year, and then it's shared out or submitted with the World's Best Workforce Plan.
So if you don't mind, Janelle, and this may be a little bit out of protocol, but we only have one teacher here that I'm aware of, actually someone. But is this actually working? Is it beneficial? Do you see that?
QComp is something that we have to do no matter what.
No matter what? Okay.
So we have to complete these things, we just get compensated for
Okay.
it now.
But that's because we were selected, the school was selected for it, they have, okay,
Yes.
all right, gotcha, okay.
Actually weren't selected as much as we worked really hard to get it.
We applied.
Oh, really?
We had to
Okay.
apply for that.
Yeah, it's,
There's no more, there's districts that they're not accepting applications into this
Gotcha.
program any longer.
Gotcha, okay.
yeah, we took a front hand and got into the program, so it's, the school deserved what we got on what's available.
So when they do the who does the evaluations to see where we're at?
Say more about your question.
So it talks about teacher growth, or as far as the growth, I guess I'm reading here, it says student growth goals and achievement in class grades. So how does that evaluation done?
So the achievement goal is based on MCA scores, and that would be
Okay,
applied.
good, fabulous, okay.
And then there are the individual growth goals.
Yep.
That a staff member, they set that individually, and then principals have access to that and they review it. They also, part of this is also their peer leadership and their peer evaluation, so that they're supporting one another.
One another, okay.
Yep.
And you find that beneficial then? All right.
And with that, I would open it up to any other roundtable questions or.
Have anything they wanna look?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I do. I want to make sure that we address the block system. We
Okay.
talked about it at a meeting, and I think there's becoming questions about that. And I know that some of the staff's already working on it. I think it came up a while back. But I think at an appropriate time, I mean, you have to have this all done by close to Christmas, I would guess, if we're gonna do any adjusting, but I'd like to just kind of have that as a topic
Sure.
on this that would come up at some point in time.
Yep.
Um,
So I can expand on that just a little bit. I know that Mr. Orline has a team of teachers that are working at the secondary level to evaluate our current block schedule, what are the things that are working, what aren't working, and to take a look at some modifications and some shifting. You're exactly right, Bruce. We can't, the time to change schedules system-wide is not in June. Those are discussions that take place in that fall, winter timeframe. And then from there, it's rolling it forward and looking at all of that alignment. As a for instance, one of the things that's different coming into next year, that really was a response from parents or questions and comments and concerns was our middle school students not having math and reading or math and English language arts every other day. Next year, our 6th and 7th graders will have math and language arts every other day all year long. So those are some things that have taken place to be responsive to questions and comments. Unless we know, unless people are, unless Mr. Orline hears what the questions are, it's hard to be responsive to those questions. I know he did send out a survey about the block schedule, and there's not a lot of response. And surveys are hard, you don't always get the best feedback, but I would encourage, if there are questions and concerns, give me a call, give David a call, just come right to, and let's talk through so that people are aware of what discussions are taking place. But that really is, the principal is working with his leadership team and the team that does the scheduling and has been responsive to scheduling over the course of years, to take a look at what's working and what's not.
I know when we did it, you just start. Everything needs to be refined somewhere.
Yep.
That's what I'd like to see,
I
whatever it
think
takes.
a tough thing with the block schedule is when we started the block schedule, we didn't have a single consistent year until this last 2 years were the
Last 2
first
years.
time where we had back-to-back school years where things were fairly similar. But when COVID, threw that upside down, and then superintendent changed and principal, just leadership changes all over the place. So, now having gotten back-to-back years, I think was at least now is a good time to evaluate some stuff and consider what could it look like. But it's also hard to, make changes every single year to something when you know if something really worked.
Right. And I think, if there are things that you're specifically hearing that, I'd love to hear what those are so I can give them to David directly so that he's able to be responsive to give you firsthand information. So then if somebody has, something, if it's something they've heard, you can come back straight from the source. So I think that's also helpful, but yes, we absolutely can put that on as a work session topic, in the fall. Yep. Probably leading up to, I might try to find out a little bit more what kind of questions there are, so it's not just just a random, here's the block schedule, so I'll reach out.
Yeah, but then David would be there with a report.
Oh, for sure.
Or somebody telling us what everybody's thoughts are, what we think we should do.
Yeah.
I have nothing to do with the kids.
Yeah.
The staff does,
Yeah.
and you guys do, so it's something that we just need, I just wanna know what we're up to.
Yeah.
And how I wanna be the best, not second best. And when we're looking for students, all the people listening, if we think we're gonna be down 17 students, we sure like their grandkids or their kids,
For sure.
or anybody that's maybe not in our system to come here.
Yeah, for sure.
They have a lot to offer in the Paynesville system.
Absolutely.
Sometimes we're kind of like closed doors. Once you get out of this kind of bubble, lots of people don't know all that we have.
For sure.
Anybody else have any?
I have a question. What is the parking situation? Students are supposed to park in the student parking lot, which is north of the school.
They're supposed to park where it's not designated by a sign.
What do we do if they don't park where they're supposed to and they do park where there are designated signs
So are we talking about during the school year or are we talking about?
during the school year.
Okay, so, Mr. Orline does reach out and give them reminders. I don't believe in ticketing and towing. It's a student parking lot. If we have repeat offenders, Mr. Orline can call them in and has a conversation with them. I think it ebbs and flows. We have times that it's better and times that it's worse. But I think after we designated the signage, and put very specific, I wanna say there's a lot of space for community and, specifically where there's a few spots that are for senior parking, so that walking across the ice was less problematic. But I would say that we try to address it individually if it's a chronic issue.
We really appreciate it, because we are seniors. And walking from the far corners of the lot is not problematic for us. I mean, we can get around. But it is not fun if we have to trot all the way across the hot parking lot. And the students are capable, of course, most of them. Those that aren't are designated, I'm sure. But we have witnessed many times students parking in the 65+ areas.
Okay.
And I know there are students parking during the school day in the pack, where the pack is supposed to park. And that's eliminating spots for our seniors and our people who are coming to work out. What made me comment today was I heard a while back now, but it finally bubbled to the top for me, of a senior citizen who comes to our pack to work out to stay mobile, who had to walk from the far end of the parking lot because there were students parked in the pack end and were witnessed leaving.
I can bring that up with both Mr. Orline and Chris again. There are students that are here working out in the middle of the day that are not, they're in work release. I've seen they are here working out at the fitness center. At that moment, they're not a student, they're a PAC member.
Right.
So sometimes that gets tricky, and for a community member to see a student leaving in that capacity would be confusing. I will certainly bring it up. I guess I would ask what would be your proposed solution?
There has to be some teeth to it. If it's not taken care of, it's going to be repeated and repeated. But knowing that that person who had to walk for a distance, who was having trouble walking, who comes here to work out to keep her mobile, that one really upset me. And
We have
part
kind of a difficult situation, it's not difficult, it's a unique situation, I don't know how many schools have this, but we have, I don't know what we call the pack industry, but it's a,
Community center along with the school district.
Yes.
And
it's a business, they're drawing in money and people sign up for it, it's no different than the one across the street in a sense.
and we're sustaining our system.
And so I'm paying to come and shop here, then I would expect. Yeah, it's a difficult dance. I'm also concerned that we just need to paint the yellow a little bit more around the corner there, because on the events, people park all the way around there and in front of the fire extinguisher gets blocked up and the whole thing there, it's I don't think parking on the corner into the turnaround was meant to be, but it's gotten to be.
Yep.
Almost every event, you'll see cars parked all the way around there.
I guess, would you suggest opening more parking places designated for the back area? I mean,
Well,
I think, Ron, what we did is we did look at what our traditional flow is to set a number that was reasonable. I think there's a couple of ways that I think it can happen. Our students need to understand the why, for one. And I think when our student, the majority of our students, if they see and understand, they do try to respond and they park where they are where they can. I've also heard feedback that it's hard. They don't understand why, when they get here at 10:30 in the morning and there's nobody in the there's nobody in the parking lot, why they can't park there. They don't understand that either, because they're coming in, going to class, I'm a student, this is my school. You know, so it's a balance of, it's the balancing act, and it's not gonna be perfect. But we just need to continue to work on that communication. I really would struggle to ticket a student, whose parent is a taxpayer in our community, when they built our facility. I think that would be really a tough sell. So it's a tough
Are there
balancing
two
act.
issues there? I thought some of those signs said 65.
I think
So
there's
that's pretty
senior parking,
straightforward, I
yep,
think, right?
yep.
So is the question on the 65 or is the question on pack parking? Is there someplace that says pack parking?
And
Because if it's 65, that's a pretty straightforward deal.
Yeah.
Most of us at 65 got.
And the problem too is that between 8 and 10, the pack is packed. All the parking spots are taken.
Yes.
So then the people who don't play pickleball learned, you don't come then, you have to come later, because it is packed. And then later on, as Janelle said, it's,
And I see that would be a big struggle, if you do have a packed parking lot, 65 plus parking lot, and students are here as well, and then somebody else comes to use the facility, but there's no place to park. But you can't, I would agree, I wouldn't be comfortable ticketing and, towing vehicles either for
Well,
it.
I don't know that ticketing is the solution, but it should be addressed. Because-
And Cheryl, it is being addressed. I think there's, I'm not entirely sure how, I think we've been trying to work on the relationship between community ed and the student body. I think there's been some tension and some discourse, and I think that hopefully over the course of time that can get better, and we can have a more, it's easier to have a respectful understanding back and forth, and it does come down to respect, right? But I think that, and I don't know exactly where that comes from, and I mean, I've had parents in my office talking about, I'm a taxpayer, I built that facility, and I'm getting notes on my child's car, help me understand that. So I've had that as well. So I'm trying to,
we can get into a philosophical argument, or not,
And-
discussion here between privilege and right.
and so
Whose
those.
rights and whose privileges and.
So and that parent happens to also be a PAC member. So now we've got complicated issues. Do you see what I'm saying? So I think where I'm coming from is I will have a conversation with Mr. Orline. I'll sit down with Chris. I'll sit down with Chris and talk about some different opportunities. And we can talk through administratively how we try to address that. And just try to help our kids do better when they know better.
Because it comes down to the respect. Because people who are coming to the PAC were promised use of the PAC. And the seniors are the ones who need that extra parking place.
Yep.
And it comes down to respect, but it needs to be
Because-
addressed.
And again, on the flip side, it can be a very young looking non-high school student utilizing a packed facility parking spot that looks, my suggestion to anybody who has a concern is address it with the community ed office when you come in to utilize the facility, and then let them know. But if you sit there and see it one time and you complain about it 3 months later, it's hard for us to go back and say, who was it, when was it, like, there's nothing you can do to address students on that if it's something that, so address it, at the time, and then, everybody will be respectful to that, the honoring of that.
And I don't know any of these kids that can't walk a little further anyway.
Yeah.
That's another whole issue.
But there's no identification on anybody's vehicle. I mean, I know people that are PAC members have a card, but as far as on the vehicle, there's no identification or sticker on the
We
vehicle.
don't have permits. Nope, we don't have parking permits.
And the students don't have parking permits either.
May have to unfortunately come down to that.
So.
Okay.
Any others? Okay, then
That's
we're done.
All right. Thank you much.